Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about stressful things. Life has a funny way of being stressful sometimes, and I guess it's not actually funny, is it? Stress is not a nice thing. You might have stress in life, you might have stress at work, you might have stress at school. In this English lesson, I'm going to talk about all of those stressful things that we have in life as human beings, all of these stressful situations. Hopefully, you understand what stress is. Stress is a feeling of worry, a feeling of anxiety. The most common way to describe it in English, of course, is to say that you are stressed, you're feeling stressed. I have a few things I have to do today, and I'm a little bit stressed about them. So I'm a little bit worried. I have a little bit of anxiety. But today, I just hope that you are able to learn a lot of new English words and phrases while we talk about stressful things. A job interview. So I picked this one because I was trying to think of one of the most stressful things that I've experienced in my life. And I must say that a job interview is very, very stressful. You go to a place where they are hiring people, you apply for a job. They might call you and say, hey, we'd like you to come in for an interview. And you go in and you talk to a few of the people who work there. They ask you lots of questions, and you try your best to explain who you are and how you could be a benefit to their company. So a job interview, definitely stressful. By the way, I do have an English lesson about job interviews. Maybe Dave or Todd could dig that up and link it in the chat if you're looking for it. Common job interview questions. And maybe if you prepare for an interview, it's less stressful. I think that's how it works. The first day of school. So I don't experience this the same way a student would, but if any of you are students or if you have kids who still go to school, the first day of school can be very stressful. In Ontario, Canada, kids spend most of the summer playing and enjoying themselves, and then as the end of August comes, they might start to feel a bit of stress because the first day of school is usually the day after Labor Day. We have a holiday in September and then school begins. I know in other places in North America, school starts a few days or weeks earlier, but here the first day of school can certainly be a stressful event. And of course, the first day of work. Let's say you go to a job interview and they call and say you got the job. You would be excited, but you might be a little bit nervous for your first day of work, because you don't know anyone necessarily. You're not sure what they're going to ask you to do, maybe. So your first day of work can be very stressful. I know for me, when I started my current job, I was very stressed on my first day of work because I wasn't sure how well the students were going to like me or listen to me in my classrooms. So the first day of work can be very, very stressful. Well, this is kind of the opposite, isn't it? The opposite of the first day of work would be getting fired or losing your job. And let me explain the difference between the two. When you get fired, it means your boss talks to you and says, we no longer need you. And generally you get fired after you've done something wrong at work. So maybe you're building things at work and you build it wrong all the time, and your boss has told you over and over again how to do it correctly, and you keep doing it wrong, they might eventually just fire you. When you lose your job, it doesn't mean you were doing anything wrong, although it could mean that, but maybe they just don't need you anymore. Maybe there are 500 people at the factory and they only need 450 people next year. So they might come to you and say, look, you're going to be laid off, we would say in English. In my part of the world, you would lose your job. But definitely losing your job or getting fired is very stressful because you're not sure where are you going to get another job? How are you going to pay your bills if you don't have a paycheck? Losing something. This is a general statement. I have in the past lost my phone. I have in the past lost my keys. I've never lost any of my children. Although once at the mall, one of our children was gone for like 30 seconds and we panicked. It's very stressful. But we're talking about things, not people. When you lose your keys, when you lose your phone, when you lose your wallet, that is very, very stressful. I think the most stressful of all of those would be when you lose your wallet and you try to figure out, where did I use my wallet last? What's the last thing I did with it? Definitely a very, very stressful situation. Running late. So this morning I was running late. Jen and I were both trying to brush our teeth at the same time. Jen was heading out this morning to bring the kids to school, and I was trying to get ready for my live lesson. And so I was running late. When you are late for work, when you're late for an appointment, when you're late for a meeting, sometimes I'm late for class at school. The bell goes at our school saying that class has begun, and I'm still running down the hallway with my books and laptop. So definitely, yes, running late is very, very, very stressful. Car won't start. So this is one that I think causes a lot of stress, especially if this is happening at the same time. If your car won't start and you need your car to start, it can be very stressful. Sometimes you get up in the morning and you're running a bit late and you jump in your car and you turn the key, and instead of starting, the car doesn't make any sound at all. That's stressful. And then you have to call a tow truck, or you have to try and get your car to a garage, or maybe someone needs to come with booster cables and hook their car up to your car so that they can boost you. So anyways, having a car that won't start is certainly a stressful situation. Being broke or having no money, it's the same thing. When I was a lot younger, there was a time where I lived in Quebec City. I worked in a restaurant, and I was very broke. I did not have a lot of money. I had enough money to pay rent, but sometimes at the end of the month, I would eat oatmeal for a few days in a row because I didn't have enough money to buy groceries. So that's when I was about, I think 21, 22. I lived in Quebec. I had a nice job, but it was only 3 nights a week. And once I paid my rent and paid my bills, I didn't always have a lot of money left over. So that was stressful. It's stressful when you don't have enough money or when you are broke. Death. So I've been meaning to do a lesson on this at some point, but I just don't know how to do it in a way that's respectful. It's a difficult topic. I do want to cover all the topics in life, but certainly when someone you know passes away, that's another way in English that we talk about death. Or we might say the family is sad because there was a death in the family, which means maybe an uncle or a cousin or a grandparent passed away. But death is certainly very, very stressful, especially when someone dies very young. When someone dies and they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s, especially if they're married and have children, it's very, very stressful on the person who's left behind. So death, I'm not going to say that one kind of death is more stressful than another, but certainly a death of a friend, death in the family, when someone you know passes away, it causes stress in all of the people who are connected to the person who has died. Injury. So I had an injury like this when I was a kid. An injury can cause a lot of stress. When I was a kid, I had a cast like that on my right hand or right arm, and that's also the hand that I write with. I'm right-handed. So when you have an injury, it's stressful. When you injure something like your hand or one of your legs, it's even more stressful, because if you injure the hand that you use all the time to write, you can't write, or maybe you can't use the mouse on the computer. If you injure your legs, you can't walk. And so not only is there the stress caused from the pain of the injury, there's the stress caused by having a difficult time leading a normal life. So injuries definitely stressful as well. And then a bad boss. I feel bad for this. This is a picture from a free picture website, but I've used this picture a lot. I usually use this picture when someone angry, when I need a picture of someone angry. But a bad boss or a bad manager at work can cause a lot of stress. If you work somewhere where your boss yells at you all the time, if you work somewhere where you do everything to the best of your abilities, but your boss still finds something wrong that you've done. If you have a boss who tells you what to do every minute of the day instead of trusting you to do the work, that can cause a lot of stress. And we would call that a bad boss. And the strong phrase in English that people would say, if they were talking with a friend, they would just say, I hate my boss. Now, hate is a very strong word, but we often use it in English to talk about situations like that. Do you want pizza? No, I hate pizza. How's work? Oh, I hate my boss. He's driving me crazy. So it doesn't mean you actually hate them. Like you're not going to yell at them or anything like that. It just means you have a bad boss and they are not very pleasant. Illness or sickness. So sometimes people ask, what's the difference between illness and sickness? They are the same thing. We usually in English, instead of saying he has an illness or they have a sickness, we usually just say they're sick. But if you have an illness or if you have sickness, it could be very stressful. Most people like to live a normal life. I think everyone likes to live a normal life. When you are sick and you can't go to work, when you are sick and you can't look at a computer screen because it makes your head feel funny. That's what I had when I had COVID. I couldn't look at a computer screen. It could be very, very stressful and very, very challenging. Moving. So my British cousins say move house. He's going to move house. I don't know the exact phrase. In Canada, we just say moving. He's moving. She's moving. When are you moving? I'm going to be moving this summer. I'm not, by the way. That's just an example. But moving can be very stressful. When you live in an apartment or a house and you have to pack up all your things and then move to another place to live, it can be very stressful. You don't know who your neighbors are going to be. You don't know necessarily what the neighborhood is like. So moving can be very, very stressful as well. Thankfully, Jen and I have only moved once. We used to live in town and then we moved to this farm, and I don't think we're going to move anytime soon. We're going to be here for quite a while. Social situation. So I actually have a social situation next weekend, and I haven't actually been in a social situation for a couple of years because of COVID. But social situations, parties, work parties, when you need to go somewhere where there's a lot of people and you need to talk to them, social situations can be awkward. That means you don't know what to talk about. It can be stressful because people might ask you a lot of questions, or you might be worried, what if no one talks to me, right? Because in a social situation, there's little groups of people talking and you might not know who to talk to when you are there. But definitely social situations can cause stress. Having a baby. So we have 5 kids. Having a baby is incredibly joyful. It brings a lot of happiness into your home. Having a baby is a wonderful thing, but at the same time, it's very stressful. And especially the day you go to the hospital. So each time we went to the hospital when Jen was giving birth to one of our kids, I'm not going to give too much information, but each birth happened completely differently than the other. So it was always a stressful situation for us. Pregnancy itself, I think our first pregnancy, when Jen was first pregnant with our first child, it was stressful, but Jen read a lot of books and she had friends who were also having babies around the same time. But actually going to the hospital, I think, was more stressful for me than Jen. Maybe we'll do an English lesson together about pregnancy and giving birth someday. I'll talk to Jen and see if she'll agree to that. She might be stressed to be in a video though. Getting married. So this was mentioned earlier. There's a number of stresses with getting married. There's the actual wedding day. The day you get married can be very stressful when you go to a church or a temple or the city hall or wherever you're going to go for the wedding, depending on your religion or if it's non-religious. It can be stressful. There's lots of family. There's lots of friends. sometimes the parents of the groom and the parents of the bride have their own ideas about how the wedding should go. And then actually being married can be stressful. After the wedding day, once you start to live together, the first few months, it can be stressful learning to live with another person. But I think it's worth it, by the way. Uncertainty. So I just put a big question mark for this one. Uncertainty is when you are not certain about something in the future. Maybe you are in school and you don't know if you're going to get a job after you graduate. So there's uncertainty there. Maybe you just bought a used car and you're not sure if it's going to break down on you. There's some uncertainty there. Maybe you lost your job and you're not sure if you'll be able to find another one. There's uncertainty. So uncertainty is any time in life when you're not sure what the future holds, okay? I even have it as a farmer. Sometimes I'm trying to do things where we need it to be sunny for 3 or 4 days in a row, and then I have some uncertainty whether I should start outdoor work because sometimes the weather changes. Divorce. So we've gone to the other end of marriage. So getting married or being in a marriage can be stressful. Hopefully it's not. But certainly divorce is stressful. Divorce is more stressful, I think, if there are children involved. Sometimes people get married and they have some children and then they get a divorce. So that's how we talk about it in English as well. We say, Joe and Jill are getting a divorce. Before you're divorced, usually couples will be separated. When you're separated, it means that you're just not living together anymore. So often when a couple starts to fight, one of the spouses will move out and they will be separated. Maybe the husband will get an apartment somewhere, or maybe someone will move back in with their parents in the relationship. So they'll be separated, then eventually they might be divorced. So separation is the choice to not live together. Divorce is the legal separation so that you are no longer married. Getting arrested. Now, I don't know a lot about this one, but I think getting arrested is probably stressful. If you've lived a life of crime, if you've committed a lot of crime, I think that you would be really stressed if you got arrested. If the police came to your door and put handcuffs on you, I think you would feel like, oh no, I've done something horribly wrong and now I am going to jail. Retirement. So interestingly enough, a lot of people look forward to being retired. And I think that sometimes people retire and they don't know what to do with themselves. That's how we would describe it. Maybe they've gone to work every day for 35 years and they really enjoyed their job. And now they're 65 or 70 and they're retired and they don't know what to do every morning. They have breakfast and they're kind of bored. So retirement, I think, is 99% awesome. But for 1% of the people, it might be a little bit stressful where maybe they don't have friends to hang out with. Maybe their friends are still working, but definitely it can be a bit stressful. And then going bankrupt. So this is when you are running a business and you aren't making enough money to pay your bills. And then eventually your business might declare bankruptcy. When you're bankrupt, it means you don't have any money. You can't pay your rent. You can't pay your bills. And it's just very, very difficult and challenging and certainly extremely stressful. Dropping your phone. I put this one in because I see this happen at school about once a month. I will see a student drop their phone and they don't always break. Phones are actually quite durable now. But the look on someone's face when they're on their phone and then they drop it, the look on their face is like, oh no, I just dropped my phone, because phones are very, very expensive. It's very, very expensive if you drop your phone and break it. In fact, many students, well, not many, a few students have phones where the screen is cracked, but the phone still works. And then they probably breathe a sigh of relief that after dropping their phone, it still works. Sending a text or an email or a text message to the wrong person. I don't know if you've ever done this. I've done this, but usually the message isn't that big of a deal. But I found this picture on the internet: accidentally text boss complaining I'm stuck in a pointless meeting. So that would be stressful if you're in a meeting and your boss is talking and you think you're texting a colleague. Wow, this meeting is boring. Send. And then you hear your boss's phone go bzz, and your boss is like basically looking at you. So sending a message or text to the wrong person. This is a relatively new stressful thing. 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't really do this, but now we live in a world where we send messages so quickly. It can be quite stressful when you hit send and you realize you've sent a message to the wrong person. A test. So tests are very, very stressful. Writing the test is stressful, but the days leading up to the test are stressful as well. If you are planning to take an English test, let's say you register to take an English test in June and we're sitting here in March, your stress is very low, but every week your stress will get bigger as the test approaches. Tests can be very stressful for people, for sure. Public speaking, this is a very common one. It can be very stressful to talk in front of people. When you know that you have to give a speech, when you know you have to stand in front of 50 or 100 or 1,000 people, it can be very, very stressful. Again, being prepared is a great way to reduce the stress a little bit. As someone mentioned, having an English conversation can be stressful. Again, two things that can reduce the stress of an English conversation. Number one, make sure you're having regular conversations each week with someone. Use Preply. There's a link in the description below. Find someone who you can pay to talk to you for 30 minutes or an hour each week. That regular weekly practice will reduce the stress you have when you speak English to someone else. And then number two, prepare for your conversations. Always try to think of things that you can talk about. A disagreement. So sometimes you and a friend might disagree. Maybe you and your brother disagree. Maybe you and your spouse disagree. A disagreement is never enjoyable. Maybe you have a disagreement with someone at work and the two of you just don't get along. It can be very stressful to go to work every day knowing that someone you work with disagrees with you on a certain matter. A child moving out. So this is when your kids get older, and this would be something stressful that's unique to parents, but all of us had parents, so we might be somewhat familiar with this. When kids start to move out, when a kid goes to university, or when a child is 17 or 18 or 19 and they move out of the house, it could be very stressful for the parents. It could be stressful for the kids, but in my experience, I think the kids are more excited to move out and the parents are more stressed when kids move out. Will they find a job? Will they do well at school? Will they find friends? Will they meet someone? All of those things are what parents think about when kids move out. Getting evicted. So this is not the same as moving, but this will cause you to move. When you get evicted, it means that your landlord, the person who owns the house or apartment that you live in, has decided that you can't live there anymore. And then you get evicted. So when you live in an apartment, if you don't pay your rent for a few months in Canada, you will get evicted. Sometimes the landlord needs to renovate the apartment. And so they might evict you while they do some repair work in there. But definitely getting evicted would be super, super stressful. Math. I put this one on here just to be funny, but some students find math very, very stressful. They like reading stories. They like learning about history, but math in particular can be very stressful for students. So this is a bit of a joke, but there's some truth to it. Math can be stressful for people. Debt. So we talked about going broke. We talked about having no money. Certainly, when you're in a lot of debt, it means you have borrowed money. So maybe you have a loan that you took out a loan to buy a car, and so you owed the bank $10,000. Maybe you took out a loan that's called a mortgage to buy a house, and so you owe the bank money. When you borrow money, you are in debt, and having a lot of debt can be very, very, very stressful. In-laws, I put this one on here just to kind of be funny. I have really nice in-laws, but when you get married, the parents and brothers and sisters of the person you marry are called your in-laws. So you have your father-in-law, your mother-in-law, and those kinds of things, brother-in-law, sister-in-law. And sometimes that can be stressful. Luckily, Jen's family is very, very nice. So my mother-in-law and father-in-law, all my brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws are wonderful people. But it can be stressful when you get married, because sometimes maybe you have disagreements with your in-laws. Maybe you don't get along with your in-laws, and that can cause a lot of stress. And to extend that, sometimes a family gathering. This is similar to the stress you would feel in a social situation. But maybe once a year, your whole family gets together at one person's house, all of your uncles and aunts and cousins and grandparents. And maybe it's just an awkward family gathering where maybe you don't get along with your uncle. Maybe you and your cousin have been arguing. So family gatherings can be somewhat stressful for people. I talked a little bit about this earlier, insomnia. Insomnia is when you go to bed and you just can't sleep. Maybe you sleep for an hour or two and then you're just wide awake for a couple hours. Maybe you go to bed and you just can't fall asleep till 2 or 3 in the morning. Maybe you go to bed and you sleep till 3 and you wake up and you just lay there with your eyes open for 3 more hours and then you get up and have breakfast. Insomnia is how we describe the inability to sleep at night, and it can cause huge amounts of stress for people. And then the last one, being overweight. So I think depending on, how you live each day, depending on your daily routine, sometimes people tend to be a little heavier than they should be. When they go to the doctor might say, you need to lose 10 pounds, or you need to lose 20 pounds, or you need to lose 5 kilograms. So being overweight usually results from having a stressful life. Your stressful life causes you to eat more, because sometimes eating reduces stress, but it can make you a little bit overweight. And so it can just be stressful to be overweight. Not only that, when you're overweight, I think you're stressed about your own health as well. So I am overweight right now. Maybe you don't think so, but I know when I go to the doctor, he's going to say that I'm 15 to 20 pounds overweight. So I guess I should work on that. I guess this image is for me. So, because I want to be a healthy, active person, for a very, very long time. I want to get old and I want to be healthy when I'm old. And in order to do that, I need to make sure I stay fit. That means that I don't get too overweight.